Hi there, everyone. Today I want to talk about my first ever attempt to repair the cap of a pen. It's done now, and I'm very happy, but it wasn't without its struggles. I got this pen in a group of pens on eBay, and I love it when I can get good deals that nobody suspects I'm getting, because I don't think anybody really knew what was in here. It didn't look at the nib. It didn't have 14 karat gold written on it. I know it's 14 karat gold because I researched the pen. Anyway, it had a big whacking crack in it, and the crack made it pretty much unusable because whenever I would set the pen down for 5 minutes without taking the ink out of it, it would essentially just dry out really fast because it was like leaving the cap off the nib. There was that much air going through there. So this is about how I fixed the crack. And right now, I'm just going to show you the parts of the pen really quick so you can get a look at the inside of the pen. Hang on here. I'm going to change the direction of my camera. All right, here we go. These are the parts of the pen. This is the feed system. It's like instead of a J-bar, it has this feed system that you can put into the pen, screw it together. And you have to basically take the body off the pen, which there's a screw mechanism down here. If you can see that, that screws right back on there. But every time you want to fill it, you have to take the body off. But the sack is fairly large. And here is the cap that I repaired on the pen. And you can even see the place I repaired it. So without any sort of further talking, we're going to go through the process of repairing the pen. Now this is a Redipoint pen, probably 20s, maybe 30s era. The pen itself is nothing impressive, but it does have a very nice flex nib, and I felt that it was worth restoring it in order to obtain the use of that flex nib. So it needs to have a cap, and it needs to have a cap that actually keeps the pen dry. The first thing we do here is we use plumber's solder. And that's a solder paste that can be used for soldering iron, or can be, I'm sorry, it says can be used with a soldering iron. It can solder copper, brass, stainless steel, nickel, and bronze. This is probably brass, I'm guessing, with a coating of some kind, but I think it should be okay to solder with this. I'm going to take a big bet and say it's okay to solder with this. Now, the nice thing about this plumbing solder is that it's non-toxic, it doesn't have any lead in it, and it is also very low melting point. So I'm going to put a little bit down here, and don't do anything the way I do it. I mean, I'm probably breaking about 1 billion different fire codes and stuff like that whatever. But anyway, so make sure that when you do this, you do it in a careful, safe way. I mean, that should be sort of obvious. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a blob of this solder, put it there, and then I wanted to use something pointy that had a good handle so that I could get right in here and cover that area with a nice even coat of solder without and here we go. All right. Whenever I try to do something like this, it always makes my hands shake. I think usually because I'm nervous of messing up. And maybe because I had a second cup of coffee. But, all right. So, I want to make sure I get that solder to completely cover the crack, but I don't want to use extra solder, because if I use extra solder, what's going to happen is it can get into these there's lettering on the pen underneath this. And it is going to obscure some of the lettering, and I can't help that. There's nothing I'll be able to do about it, but hopefully it will be a minimal amount. We'll look at it when it's done, and we'll see what that's about. So this is a little Japanese pen torch called a blazer. I like to use it for these purposes because it's very small flame. So I'm going to start by using the small flame. And if I can get the solder to melt with this, I'm never going to go to a bigger flame. By the way, this behind me here is fire brick. And fire brick is really nice because, so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to heat the cap itself actually. And the reason I'm trying to do this is because I want the solder to flow into it and not melt on the surface. So I'm going to actually try to heat it this way. And then, you know, get as much of it to flow into that crack as I can. All right, so here we go. And I'm not sure we did that great. Well, maybe see how we can do by heating the other side here. Sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. I've got this wedged in here so it won't, that's a fire brick there. So I've got it wedged in here so it won't like overheat because the fire brick will actually take heat away. So I'm going to try to heat this side to try to get this stuff to move a little bit. It's kind of wiggling because of the way I have it wedged in there, which is really somewhat annoying. I think I'm going to change my position here. We have about another millimeter of crack to get done here. All right, I'm going to go clean that off. So the next thing I'm going to do with this is file it down with a jeweler's file. And that just looks like this. And I'm going to do that for quite a while until I get a lot of the excess of this off. And yes, I could use something larger, or I could hook up something to a Dremel tool, but I feel like when you're using these hand tools, it can be a lot safer. Like, you don't necessarily want to take more than you plan off of the pen. So that's why these hand tools work nicely. If you look right in there, I'm looking into the camera, I can see it now. See, this is where I soldered. This is a Redipoint, pen, and you can't completely see the name anymore because I had to solder over that. But what it did is this pen was drying out every time I used it because the crack in the cap was fairly extreme. And now with that soldering, that problem has been taken care of. So my next step will be to buy a like a brush-on type of plating to repair the plating in the area where you can see the bronze there that I ended up sanding off. So by the time I'm done, all you're going to really see is a small interruption in the name of the pen. It'll look kind of like a slightly worn spot. But anyway, really the reason I'm restoring this pen is because of the beauty of its performance. So I'd like to show you that today. The first thing I'm going to do is we unscrew the pen. Now, these large sack pens, we saw the inside earlier. It's a very large sack pen. When you first write with them after a period of not writing, they are likely to kind of the feeds will burp. So you'll put it down on the paper and you'll get a blob of ink like that. See that? That's a burp. B-U-R-P. Okay, so pretty much you want to grab your pen and do this on a piece of separate paper. And until it starts to sort of feel like it's going to write normally, which it does now, and that's just the air coming into the sack. Because these pens, when you write with them, they're, forgive me, this is my sketchbook. I'm going to bring out a new page here and we'll write with this pen. Okay, so here we go. This is the sketchbook is a Moleskine Cahiers, which I can't seem to sit right because of the camera, but that's all right. I think I got it now. All right, so this is a Redipoint. And I would call this a broad tip normally. Broad flex nib. And it's 14 karat gold. Made in St. Paul, Minnesota. My mom lives in Minnesota. It's a nice place if you can stand the winter. I can't. And it's by Ingersoll. And it really performs better on a less absorbent paper, I think. I was just writing with it on a thicker, kind of like harder, less absorbent paper. And it did a little bit better in terms of the fine, looked a little finer. But here's some flex. This thing can be pushed really far before it railroads. It's got a beautiful feed that just gushes ink. I love it. And when you use this Iroshizuku ink for flex, you just get this amazing. So it's this ink right here, the Iroshizuku Fuyugaki. And when you use that for flex, it just has the most beautiful shading. I just love it. You can totally see that. So your regular line is like this, and like I said, the feed is extremely saturated, so that's why we're getting these little dots at the end of the line. We wouldn't be getting that on a more of a fountain pen friendly paper, I would say. I don't want to blame the paper because I really like my Moleskine, but even if I did this on a paper with gesso, we'll experiment in a second with that, and we'll see how much of it is the pen and how much of it is the paper. And I'm telling you that I think a lot of it is the paper. Look at that. That's like, what? 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 Mega flex. I love it. Love. Love the Mega Flex. Okay, so